Today we continue with the Mahāparinibbāna Sutta from the long discourses of Lord Buddha, Dīgha Nikāya number 16. This is week 3, and from the start we knew how long this sutta is, but it's important for us to take the time and cover as much as we can of especially the earlier portions that often get to be neglected whenever we discuss or even bring to mind this, even the name of this sutta, Mahāparinibbāna, of Lord Buddha, the final full release of Lord Buddha. We saw during the past 2 weeks how much emphasis Lord Buddha placed on the proper way of maintaining unity, harmony, and where does that start? In the individual. And then slowly, it encompasses others, those people we find around ourselves, the family, in the case of the bhikkhus, the sangha, and how to make sure that with the maintenance of certain type of behavior, coming together in harmony, staying with each other in harmony, communicating with consideration, and then separating, going each on our own paths in harmony. That thing which we don't have in the world. We see how essential it is because we've been fooling ourselves for the past several centuries, human beings that is, with promises, different advancements, industrial revolution, this type of revolution, technology, digital technology, this, that, they will constantly be coming towards us, in our direction. All these different movements, different trends, but the essence of what it is that keeps this planet together in a cohesive manner, in harmony, is what's at stake, what is being neglected, and essentially what we're being confronted by, what being presented by through this, in the beginning portion of this sutta, this wonderful sutta, is sīla. Basically, Lord Buddha is talking about sīla in an interesting way, being the great teacher that he was. The 3 trainings are being presented to us again and again. Before he breathed his last breath, he kept on calling the bhikkhus over. And today we will see another phase of that. And this will be the section 5 of the sutta, which is entitled The Barriers of More Immoral Behavior. Things that come to us because of akusala kamma. Akusala means whatever is unwholesome, whatever brings us essentially suffering. Today, the world is in this state because we do not practice sīla, basically. In the Dīgha Nikāya and other suttas, Lord Buddha is asked as to why the lifespan of human beings in different eras was a lot longer. For us, if we hear about it, let's say if we read something like 40,000 years or something like that, it raises an eyebrow. We start giggling, we start laughing, we think it's ludicrous. And so did the bhikkhus who were asking Lord Buddha that question. And when they asked him also as to what was the reason or reasons, it was quite simple. Sīla. People used to practice a lot more sīla in those days. Still, 100 years is not so bad for a human being's lifespan today. but we can do a lot better. So here Lord Buddha is is actually admonishing the bhikkhus, to instructing them in different areas. If you notice, we went through different areas, Rajagaha, etc. We're going to see Vaisali. In this case, it's Nalanda that we covered last week. So let's begin. So here is from last week, he was in Nalanda at Pavarika's mango grove. And so this is the next phase of that journey. Afterwards, when the Blessed One had stayed at Nalanda for as long as he pleased, he again addressed the Venerable Ananda and said, "Come, Ananda, let us go to Pataligama." "As you wish, Lord." And the Blessed One, along with the Sangha of bhikkhus, went and took up residence in Pataligama. Then the lay students of Pataligama, in hearing that the Blessed One had arrived at Pataligama, quickly went and approached the Blessed One, and after respectfully greeting him, sat down at one side and addressed the Blessed One in this manner: "May the Blessed One, Lord, kindly come and stay at our main guest house." And the Blessed One consented with his silence. In those days, it was almost like the communal area. We also had something like this in different cities. We will see also the gabled house, or the peaked roof house, it's called, in Vaisali. And we also have the brick house. So in different cities had their own main area where the elders and whatever was supposed to be discussed communally would be held there. So here we have the population of Pataligama calling on Lord Buddha, inviting him rather to come and stay in that location. Knowing the Blessed One's consent, because he consented in silence, the lay students of Pataligama arose from their seats, respectfully saluted him, and keeping their right sides towards him, departed for the guest house of their city. Once there, they immediately began preparing by covering the floor all over with precious carpeting, arranging seats and water, and placing oil lamps. Having done this, if you've ever seen in some Buddhist temples bronze or copper statue-like vertical structures like this, usually it has birds, figurines, but it is basically an oil lamp. And it would be gradually, it's like different stories of it, different levels of it. And they would light those up, and in the pitch darkness, let's say in this case, because it will be covered in a tent setting, it would be giving off quite a bit of light. So if you had a few of those, it would just light up the place. And the water was necessary also, obviously, for drinking, but especially for the bhikkhus, when they come, their feet would get washed by the lay people at entering, because they were walking barefoot, the bhikkhus. Some were wearing some footwear, but most of them were barefoot. So having done this, they went back to the Blessed One, respectfully greeted him, and while standing at one side announced, "Lord, the guest house is now ready, with the floor covered all over with carpets, seats and water being prepared, with oil lamps that have been set up and ready. May the Blessed One approach the guest house at his convenience." Then, when it was morning, the Blessed One put on his robes, and by keeping his alms bowl and outer robe, went to the Pataligama's guest house together with the Sangha of bhikkhus. Once there, the lay disciples washed the Blessed One's feet before he entered into the guest house, as he took his prepared seat against the central pillar facing east. This was followed by the Sangha of bhikkhus, who also entered the guest house after having their feet washed by the lay disciples, and took their seats near the western wall facing east, so that the Blessed One was now seated before them. Meanwhile, the lay disciples from Pataligama, also having washed their own feet, entered the council hall and sat down near the eastern wall facing west, so that the Blessed One was seated in front of them. So they're all surrounding Lord Buddha. the fruits of an immoral and a moral life. Then the Blessed One, by addressing the crowd gathered in Pataligama, said, "Householders, there are these 5 dangers to be faced by one who lives without any morality, because of his negligence in developing a virtuous character." What are these 5? The one living without morality, as he neglects to develop a virtuous character, comes to a great loss of wealth as a result of his negligence. This is the first danger to be faced by one who lives without any morality, because of his negligence in developing a virtuous character. Some people consider morality to be to have a more of a relativistic view of morality. So it's basically up to the interpretation of the individual. And oftentimes people say, well, there cannot be one standard moral value. Well, it's very easy to put this to the test. When you involve yourself on the receiving end of things, meaning if you were about to commit a certain act, which you have somehow convinced yourself that it is not immoral, that it is okay for you to do, just switch gears and place yourself in a position where you're no longer the doer of such an act, but a person who will be affected by that. And see if that still will not affect you in any way. Meaning it will just brush off. It will just be as if nothing happened. It's a neutral effect. Nothing took place, nothing negative. But usually, if not always, in such cases, whenever we are, a very simple example is an addict. Let's take a gambler, for example. A gambler who happens to be a caregiver, a parent, let's say, or a spender, without considering as to what might happen to those people who also depend on the income that they will be wasting away. In their mind, it's not a waste. But will anyone be affected by this act, even though society deems it as not necessarily an immoral act? But we must consider the impact of an action, even if we're able to convince ourselves that it will never have any negative impact. In fact, it might even have a positive impact. I've heard one acquaintance in the past, acquaintance of mine, who was trying to convince me that gambling was, in fact, a very wholesome thing for him. He had convinced himself that it is a very wholesome thing. But every time he went to gamble, he was gambling away his future. But it was creating this extra adrenaline rush in him. This is one example. Fortunately, he was a single person. Nevertheless, he would have negative impact on all those people around him, somehow associated with him. So basically, the relative nature of the act, we need to question that. And one of the best ways to do that is to consider the impact this action of mine would have on another person or on society at large. The one living without morality, as he neglects, we read that. Also, the one living without any morality gets a bad reputation, as his ill fame keeps spreading. This is the second danger to be faced by one who lives without any morality, because of his negligence in developing a virtuous character. There are sayings that I've come across over the years in relation to reputation. A person might spend a whole lifetime working on building for themselves a good reputation. unfortunately, it's so easy to lose that reputation. And Lord Buddha is warning here the people of Pataligama. And let's be mindful also, just like last week when we were talking about bhikkhus and Lord Buddha's instruction to the bhikkhus, that it's not just for the bhikkhus that he was talking, those guidelines he gave. In the same manner, here he's talking to the people of Pataligama, but remember, the bhikkhus are sitting right there. They're also listening. So Lord Buddha is also teaching the bhikkhus to be aware of their immoral behavior, because bhikkhus are not immune. They're not immune to immoral behavior, so they need to keep themselves in check all the time. Also, the one living without any morality, whatever gathering he approaches, whether of Kaptiya warriors, Brahmins, ordinary householders, or those of recluses and ascetic Brahmins, he does so while being flustered and without confidence. Bhikkhus, this is the third danger to be faced by one who lives without any morality, because of his negligence in developing a virtuous character. Today we live in an open society, as it were, where everything we do, we say, is pretty much out in the open, thanks to digital technology, the web. Within a few milliseconds, it can be up online for everyone to see. So in a way, that can also help us. This is one way of using technology to augment, to support our own sīla, to be mindful. Hey, I'm under, I'm on camera, basically. And we literally are most of the time. If you leave your house, you're on candid camera. Everywhere you go around the world, there's cameras everywhere. So that can also help us, help a wise person, intelligent person, to really reconsider their behavior, their actions. So that can help the situation. Now, in this case, Lord Buddha is talking about a person who with moral behavior, with virtuous behavior, does not need to worry whenever entering whatever kind of a group or an assembly. How are they going to look at me? How will they view me? Will I be looked at as an embarrassment, for example? So Kattiyas are the warrior classes to which Lord Buddha himself, as Siddhartha Gautama, belonged, the Sakya clan. The Brahmins, of course, he's listing the different classes of Indian society of that era. So, and assemblies are very important. We're going to see this later on as well within the same sutta, but in numerous other suttas where Lord Buddha makes it a point where he stresses how he has entered all kinds of assemblies and has kept sīla, samadhi, panya in each of these, including the non-human assemblies. And that is what he's also inviting us to enjoy. A person with morality, a person with a virtuous character need not worry about a thing. If you're maintaining your 5 precepts, if you're not lying, basically you don't have anything to hide. And you don't have to remember, as I forgot who it was, I think it might have been Mark Twain, you don't have to remember what you said yesterday about a certain event, because whatever you said yesterday won't be different from whatever you say about that event today. Why? Because it's the truth. You don't have to remember, what did I say? What did I say about this thing? No, you just remember the event, period. End of story. And people will see that. People will rely on you. People will trust you. Hence, sīla is also protection. It is the foundation that Lord Buddha is coming back to. Because we live in a world today where it has become an unpleasant word when we talk about morality. People, meditators, so-called spiritual people with spiritual leanings find it passé of a term to use the word virtue or morality, when in every way you cannot have spiritual, any kind of spiritual discipline without morality. There's no questions about that. But, Lord Buddha is stressing here the importance of it. Also, the one living without any morality after death, he reappears in the miserable realms as he is reborn in hell. This is the fifth danger to be faced by one who lives without any morality because of his negligence in developing a virtuous character. See, one thing that many of the, at least Western philosophers have done in the 20th century, late 19th century, is present ideas of that eventually, I have a difficulty calling it evolved into, but turned into a way of thinking that became almost unanimously supported by the masses. An idea that after death, there's nothing. And in fact, if you are a proponent, a believer in a life after death, a state of being after death, then you were mocked in academia, for example. Even today, we still have that. We call it modern thinkers or secularism, things like that. Well, one of the ways that morality will lose its value for the person is when we remove the presence of what comes after this life is over. Meaning, where did all those actions go? The effects of those. And that's why you have in certain secular Buddhist circles the idea that karma or kamma, action, and the vipakas, or the product of those actions, were some philosophical concept that was added later. It's not essential, basically, for the Dhamma. Nothing could be further from the truth, because you take that and the whole doctrine collapses. Because action produces results. Otherwise, Lord Buddha would never have taught the Four Noble Truths. They're all connected. He would never have taught the Noble Eightfold Path. So we must consider at least the plausibility, even if you are a very strict empiricist, reading a statement like this, miserable realms. Well, you don't have to go even life after death, after this life is over, even in this life. When you are finding yourself breaking precept after precept, you already are living in a miserable realm, aren't you? When you feel the pain, the worry, restlessness in the mind, the remorse, I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have hurt this person. What is that if not a miserable realm? You can use that approach as well. Therefore, householder, these are the 5 dangers to be faced by one who lives without any morality because of his negligence in developing a virtuous character. Now, as is always the case where Lord Buddha is presenting a negative quality and trying to admonish us to have us avoid, he's now going to present the antidote to that. The benefits of moral behavior. So the other one was the barriers of immoral behavior. This one is the benefits of moral behavior. On the other hand, householders, there are these 5 benefits to be enjoyed by the one who lives with morality as he diligently strives to develop a virtuous character. What are these 5? Householders, the one living with morality, as he diligently develops a virtuous character, accumulates a great deal of wealth as a result of his heedfulness. This is the first benefit to be enjoyed by the one who lives with morality, because he diligently strives to develop a virtuous character. This is in contrast to the person who is constantly spending money, for example. Their resources are being spent. It doesn't, I gave the example of a gambler earlier, but it could be somebody who splurges on their food. In those days, grains of rice and things like that, they were money. So many people would do bartering and things like that. So what if you were a person who would invite your friends over and in your house and spend all your resources on entertaining? That's another way of wasting the food that your children need to live off of. And now they have less food for the whole week. But a person who is living a morally conscious life, aware, remember, hiri and ottappa are here. When we talk about morality or virtue, hiri and ottappa, wise moral shame and wise moral consideration, those things have to be there when we come across the term morality. You cannot live a healthy, harmonious, spiritually oriented life without morality, period. No ifs and buts about that. That's what we see again and again in the Dhamma. And if it's missing, that is not the Dhamma that Lord Buddha taught. Furthermore, the one living with morality gets a good reputation as his good fame keeps spreading. This is the second benefit to be enjoyed by the one who lives with morality, because he diligently strives to develop a virtuous character. Self-explanatory. Furthermore, the one living with morality, whatever gathering he approaches, whether of Khattiya warriors, Brahmins, ordinary householders, or those of recluses and ascetic Brahmins, he does so while being calm, composed, and with confidence. This is the third benefit to be enjoyed by the one who lives with morality, because he diligently strives to develop a virtuous character. One thing that often gets to be neglected when we get fixated on the word morality or what it represents, we forget how important it is to establish within yourself the tranquility of mind. Sila is your quick way in to experiencing tranquility, meaning experiencing equanimity. So morality is not necessary, it's not actually something that is imposed from the outside upon us by society, by this, even though, as Lord Buddha is listing, it will have a bearing on society or social settings, like in this case with assemblies. But essentially, it has to do with the person. I was mentioning it to a group of individuals who, many of them were being exposed to Buddhist concepts for the first time when I met them yesterday. And it was a rather large group, I would say, maybe 30, 50 people. I didn't count, but and there was, I had to explain how when we take precepts as Buddhists, it is self-directed. No one is imposing it upon us. In fact, the person has to request it from the teacher 3 times before being given the 5 precepts. That establishes you, first and foremost, in this world of protection that is self-generated. Now, that doesn't stay like that, because it will spread its fragrance into the world around you, meaning other beings, other individuals around you will also get a taste of that protective quality. And it doesn't stop, it proliferates, just like, you know, a nuclear expansion, it just keeps growing. So just like the reputation that we just read through earlier. Furthermore, the one living with morality, once the body fails and is no more, he dies a serene and an unconfused death. This is the 4th benefit to be enjoyed by the one who lives with morality, because he diligently strives to develop a virtuous character. Several times people have asked me about what to do in a situation where there is a loved one or someone they want to help who is nearing the end of their lives. How would you approach it? What would you do, especially if they are not so familiar nor perhaps even interested in the Dhamma? What would you use as your way in to try to help them? So one of the things that I try to encourage them to do is to remind the person of the wonderful qualities of not causing harm to others, especially if we know that this person has pretty much kept the 5 precepts, even if they're not Buddhists. So I know I've experienced this myself as a layman. I had acquaintances, even neighbors in some cases, where I had to approach them when they were in hospice care from cancer, terminal illness, and they were living the last few weeks of their lives. And I would go to them every day at the end of my workday, stop by and wait until they became coherent, have them smile, maybe say a few jokes, and then remind them of how wonderful it is that they did not lie, for example. They did not steal. They did not kill anyone. That calms the mind down. Lord Buddha knew about this so long ago, and that's what he's saying here. Because the last thoughts a person has, whatever thoughts they are having at that very critical moment, it's very crucial as to where they will end up. So you can always do that. Instead of warning them, instead of giving them gloomy images and causing them terror and fear, no, dwell on the things that you know that they could benefit from. Even if they have not lived such a life, you can talk about the great qualities of having such a life. That also will do a wonderful job in calming the mind down. Therefore, householders, these are the 5 benefits to be enjoyed by the one who lives with morality as he diligently strives to develop a virtuous character. In this manner, the Blessed One spent much of the night instructing the lay disciples of Pāli Canon in the Dhamma, as he inspired, roused, and lightened their hearts with an enlivening talk on the Dhamma, after which he dismissed them by saying, "The night is now far advanced, householders. You may go at your convenience." "As you wish, Bhante," said the lay disciples of Pāli Canon as they rose from their seats, and after respectfully paying homage to the Blessed One and keeping him to their right, they departed. Once they had left, the Blessed One went into his resting area. The building of a fortress, next section. Now, during that time, the 2 chief ministers of Magadha, Sunidha and Vassakara, were jointly building a fortress at Pāli Canon as a defense against any possible attacks by their neighboring Vajji principality. You remember Vassakara? He was the chief minister from the first section of the sutta who had come to as a I guess messenger in a way to try to get some clues as to how to beat the Vajji princes, because King Ajatasattu wanted to obliterate them. So this is one of them. So Vassakara, and the other one is the other chief minister. Also, at that time, many devas in large numbers, counted in the thousands, had already taken possession of various sites at Pāli Canon, whereby senior royal ministers and powerful members of the Magadhan society, who were engaged in constructing various palaces, had these structures of theirs soon enough being guarded by numerous powerful devas. Similarly, mid-level royal ministers and powerful members of the Magadhan society, who were engaged in constructing various dwellings for themselves, soon enough had their new homes also being guarded by numerous mid-level powerful devas. And the same was the case with the lower-level royal ministers and other official members of the Magadhan society, who were also engaged in constructing various buildings, had their new buildings guarded by numerous lower-level devas. All this the Blessed One saw with his divine eye, that is pure and far surpasses the visual faculty of humans, as he observed how a large number of devas, to be counted in the thousands, were coming in to take possession and guardianship of the newly constructed structures being built in Pāli Canon. In our so-called modern day society, many might shrug off this section entirely because it doesn't match their own paradigm of reality, especially when we're talking about devas coming in to take possession of a place. For some reason, we have very selective ways of looking at reality, of life. This has to do with conceit, I think, the conceit that human beings have towards ourselves, and only those animals that we consider to be somewhat relatable, acceptable in being there, to exist, such as dogs and cats and maybe rats, deer, horses, elephants, camels, etc. But whenever it gets to other beings, including ants, unless they show up through the cracks in the walls, they don't exist for us, or bacteria, or viruses, things of that nature. For some reason, we just send them into oblivion or obliterate them from our memory or conscious awareness. If you go to Bali, a place like that, every single house, it's rather, I think 100% almost is occupied by Hindus, those who of the Hindu faith, and they've been living there for generations. And every household outside of it has a small altar, small area where they have a small shrine, and where they dedicate some fruits, some edibles and flowers, and they really do a beautiful, ornate job in preparing something lovely to present to that local deva, who's also a protector of that domicile, that home. As industrial revolution happened and things like that, and we became more and more modern, such things get to be more quaint or very exotic or ethnic or whatever you want to call it. But the energies are still there, unless the household basically crumbles or something happens. And you know, there's a lot of folklore involved as well. People have taken it to an extreme, but we should not be throwing the baby with the bathwater, because we exist and other beings exist as well, and they also need homes. They also need, especially if it's a brand new home, and devas like that, especially if it's a beautiful place, if they are being invited as well. So this is something that many people have a difficulty swallowing as you know, having to do with reality. So I'll leave that, you know, for them to process. And at the crack of dawn, having already arisen, the Blessed One addressed the Venerable Ananda by saying, Ananda, who are those busily engaged in the construction of a fortress city within Pataligama? Bhante, they are Sunidha and Vastakara, the two chief ministers of Magadha, who are building a fortress at Pataligama as a defense against any possible attacks by their neighboring Vajji princes. It is as if, Ananda, both Sunidha and Vastakara had been taking advice from the gods of the 33. He's saying as if they are in close communication with the Tavatinsa gods, meaning Sakka, the Lord of the gods. For Ananda, I see and observe with the divine eye that is pure and far surpasses the visual faculty of humans, how there is a large number of devas to be counted in the thousands who are coming in to take possession and guardianship of the newly constructed structures being built in Pataligama. And then that whole section repeats. And then Lord Buddha continues, truly, Ananda, as far as the Aryan race extends and trade routes spread, this will be the foremost city, Pataliputta, a major trading center. But Pataliputta, Ananda, will be destroyed by three perils: fire, water, and dissension. And this was a very well-known city for a long time. But it doesn't exist anymore. It does exist in history books, but it was a major trading route, as Lord Buddha mentions, but it was also a very important place for the dissemination of the Dhamma. So it was a junction point for various schools, and especially bhikkhus walking or going through. It was a very prosperous place as well. Later, the two chief ministers, Sunita and Vassakara, went to the Blessed One, and after paying their respects and exchanging many pleasant words, stood together at one side and addressed him by saying, "May the Blessed Gautama please accept our invitation for tomorrow's meal, together with the Sangha of bhikkhus." And the Blessed One consented through his silence. Then he just nodded basically, or smiled. Then understanding that the Blessed One had accepted their offer for a meal for the Sangha, the two chief ministers, Sunita and Vassakara, both left as they returned to their homes and had choice food, hard and soft, prepared. And on the next morning, when it was time, they sent word to the Blessed One. "It is time, Blessed Gautama. The meal is ready, sir." Thereupon, early in the morning, the Blessed One, having put on his robes and by taking his outer robe and alms bowl, together with the Sangha of bhikkhus, went to the guest house, where the meal was to be served by the two chief ministers, Sunita and Vassakara. Once there, the Blessed One sat on his prepared seat, and both Sunita and Vassakara, with their own hands, began serving the Sangha of bhikkhus, headed by the Buddha, various choice foods, both the hard and soft kinds. If you remember a sutta that we covered again from the Dīgha Nikāya, Pāyasi Sutta, some months ago, you had Prince Pāyasi at the end being convinced that there is life after death and how there's actions, and actions have results, good and bad, and how he had his main chief servant go ahead and open up his treasure trove of food and clothing and etc., and provide generously gifts to all those needy in his area, in his region. But he did not offer the food with his own hands. So this is very important. Most people forget this. Sometimes people offer generosity, let's say, or do gifts, gift giving or dana, but they do it through some other means. It's important, if you have the opportunity, if you're physically there, if you have that chance, and you're making, let's say, a meal, lunch dana, to offer it with your own hands, because the merits are far greater than doing it through someone else. So long as you have the means to do it, you have your own hands, you're able to get out of bed, you're not sick, or you have those abilities, let's say. But if you don't, it won't matter. You will still gain those. But because there is a hesitancy, sometimes people feel like it's beneath them to pick up with a spoon and put the meal in a bhikkhu's bowl. But it shows humility. It's not just the act of doing, what it is doing to the mind of the server. It's crucial for us to understand. And what state of mind is it with which we are making that offering? That is very important. Remember, I've spoken in the past about 4 kinds of dana, right? So one where the person who is giving is full of metta and joy in making that dana, while the recipient is very indifferent, maybe even has dosa, anger in their mind. Well, I deserve better meal, or whatever gift it is. And another situation is where the giver is full of dosa, hatred in the heart, but the recipient is receiving the gift as if it is a gift from the gods. It's as someone like Lord Buddha is giving him the gift. Basically, think of that much joy that could happen in a person's heart. So the receiver then is getting all of the merits. There's the third kind, which both individuals are very much, following, just pretending basically. Neither of them wants to be there. The giver doesn't want to give, but they have to because mom and dad used to do that, or somebody told them to. and the receiver is taking it because they just have to, keep up with pretenses. They also don't want to be received, but they're just doing it for doing sake. So neither of them actually benefit from those merits. And then there's the fourth kind, where both giver and receiver are tremendously joyful for that beautiful act. And those are the best kinds of dana, where they both, it's a celebratory, even the devas rejoice around that. They will come, they will be present when there's that much joy involved. So I just wanted to mention that about serving with one's own hands. It's very important in this Dhamma and discipline. Later, when the Blessed One had finished his meal and had removed his hand from the bowl, the ministers took close seats and sat down at one side as a sign of respect. And the Blessed One expressed his appreciation by uttering these verses. Wherever he may make his dwelling, the wise man should take care of those virtuous ones, living the chaste, holy life, chaste. They're not engaging in any sexual activities, basically. Because remember, even today, you have a lot of holy, so-called holy individuals in India and elsewhere, even within the Buddhist circles, where they do not live the life of a celibate life. Sometimes I've come across individuals who call themselves monks, but they have wives, or they have, people they engage with sexually. I have to scratch my head as to where the monk part comes in. So, and having attended to these worthy ones, having made offerings to them, all this does not get ignored by those local devas, witnessing these gifts being made. So Lord Buddha is hinting at the fact that these actions are not being omitted, not being ignored by the local devas. Lord Buddha did not say to Sunidha and Vassakara, hey, your palace or your fortress is filled up to the brim with devas. He's not saying that, but he's hinting, which we'll see Lord Buddha doing quite a bit of in the sutta, hinting, giving clues. And by him transferring and sharing the merits of these with the local devas, he himself becomes revered and honored by the devas themselves. That's why we must think of the devas whenever we are making an offering. Even if you are doing it in your own home, in front of Lord Buddha's statue, or giving a fruit to someone, a food, a cup of water to someone who's in need, always think of the devas and your loved ones, present and past. He himself becomes revered and honored by the devas themselves, who tremble with happiness and care for him, becoming like mothers for him, their only son. Thus, he who thus enjoys their grace, and when one becomes the beloved of the devas, one is always met with good fortune. After saying these words, the Blessed One arose from his seat and departed. Crossing the Ganges. Then both Sunidha and Vassakara followed closely behind the Blessed One, step by step, saying, whichever gate the recluse Gautama passes through today while he leaves Pataligama, that we will name the Gautama Gate. And the ford by which he crosses the river Ganges shall also be named the Gautama Ford, the junction point, the crossroads. In this way, the gate through which the Blessed One left came to be known as the Gautama Gate. But later, when the Blessed One came to the river Ganges to cross it, it was full to the brim, so that even crows standing on its banks could easily drink from it. So it was so high. Meanwhile, people were trying to obtain a boat, while others were tying up reeds into rafts to ferry themselves across. But as easily as a strong man might stretch out his bent arm or draw in his outstretched arm, the Blessed One vanished from this side of the river Ganges, along with all the Sangha of Bhikkhus, and immediately reappeared on the other bank of the flooding Ganges. You can imagine what this must have done to the observers, especially the two chief ministers, observing, looking at all the people trying to obtain a boat, whereas others were tying up reeds into rafts to ferry themselves across the flooding Ganges. The Blessed One uttered these heartfelt words. While wanting to ferry themselves across the ocean vast, many try building boats or binding rafts. Meanwhile, the wise ones have already crossed, leaving the lowlands far behind. This is an invitation for arahantship to everyone. Arahantship is not reserved for the few. Please remember that. The mind, especially Mara, will convince almost every one of us who are truly interested in pursuing the path of the Dhamma. Sooner or later, Mara is going to come and whisper into your heart, to your ears, that, hey, it's okay, forget it, it's okay, you're not going to get there. Arahantship is not for you. You don't have the right stuff for it. All this kind of nonsense Mara is going to throw at us. Do not believe such words. Place the Dhamma in your heart. That is what Lord Buddha is inviting us to do. Every one of us is trying to, well, we're on one side of the bank of the river. There's the Oga, the flood in between. And each of us who are here, that means something triggered in us some time ago. We've tasted dukkha and we want it to stop. We want samsara to stop. And Lord Buddha is saying, well, it can stop. It can. It stopped for me, he says. It stopped for these arahant bhikkhus that are with me. These anagami bhikkhus that are with me, he says. These once returner bhikkhus that are with me. These stream winner bhikkhus who are with me, he says. And many, 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 many upasakas and upasikas who have tasted these different levels of awakening. So, we're no different. Now we get to part 2, the journey to Vaisali. I want to go through this section as much as I can today, so we can hopefully speed some portion of it up. The Four Noble Truths, section 8. This is part 2 of the sutta. Then the Blessed One spoke to the Venerable Ananda and said, "Come, Ananda, let us go to Kotigama." "As you wish, Lord." And the Blessed One, along with the Sangha of bhikkhus, went and took up residence in Kotigama. Then, while addressing the bhikkhus, the Blessed One stated, "Bhikkhus, it is due to not understanding, because of not penetrating into the Four Noble Truths, that both you and I have been wandering and migrating ceaselessly through this long course of rebirths. What are these four? They are the noble truth of suffering, the noble truth of the origin of suffering, the noble truth of the cessation of suffering, and the noble truth of the path leading to the cessation of suffering." Please don't turn these into some mantra type of repetition. You won't gain much. It must be relevant with your living experience. Throughout the day, any moment you experience any kind of pain, especially psychological, emotional, always check, is that dukkha? Just ask that question. Is that dukkha? And if it is pain, if it is a sense of discontent, some sense of strife, battle going on inside of you, guess what? That is dukkha. Your dukkha of that moment. And if there is dukkha, there's a reason for it. And the reason is usually, if not always, 100% of the time, I say usually because it's camouflaged, 100% of the time, when we probe deeper, we see that that's the case. We are holding on to something that we like the situation to be, meaning otherwise than what it is. The holding on to that is the reason why the suffering is perpetuating. Those are the two of the Four Noble Truths, by the way. The moment you ask yourself those questions, is this dukkha, and am I holding on to something? Suddenly, that questioning itself opens the door for relief to take place. That's called nirodha. You don't have to call nirodha cessation or ending of suffering. You can call it relief. It doesn't matter. You can make up your own word, but make it be based on reality, your reality of that experience. And then you go ahead and apply the Noble Eightfold Path. And that's why any moment of the day is the perfect moment to enter into Nibbana. Not bad. Not bad. That's how beautiful this path is that Lord Buddha left us with. But bhikkhus, now that these have been understood and penetrated, cut off is the craving for further existence. Destroyed is that which leads to renewed becoming, and there is no more rebirth into future lives. In a way, this was a lion's roar. He's proclaiming that he's cut off. He has experienced Nibbana. This is what was said by the Blessed One, as the happy one, or Sugata, the master, continued in verse. By not being able to see how the Four Noble Truths take place, long has been this exhausting path from one birth to the next. But now that these are clearly seen and understood for what they are, the very cause for rebirth is removed, and with the root of suffering fully plucked, rebirth has ended then and there. Then, while still at Kotigama, the Blessed One continued giving discourses to the bhikkhus by instructing them. Bhikkhus, such is virtue, such is collectedness of mind, such is wisdom, sīla, samadhi, and panya. And this, if you recall, this paragraph, we've gone through this. Lord Buddha is repeating this to different sets of, different groups of bhikkhus in different regions everywhere he's going. As a good, loving, caring teacher that he was, despite the fact that he was 80 years old with a severe backache, he still kept on journeying to these different parts to go and meet with his students, with his bhikkhus in different areas. Because some bhikkhus might have been on retreat or unable to go to see Lord Buddha. And by the time that someone would take to go and send a messenger to get the bhikkhus to come to Lord Buddha where he was staying at, all that would have been extra daunting. So Lord Buddha said, I'll go. So please bear that in mind, the dedication, the loving dedication that Lord Buddha had. Can we as teachers do that today as bhikkhus? Can we? Well, of course, we should be able to. That's why Lord Buddha set the example. It's a high bar that we have to meet that standard. And if Lord Buddha did it, and he was a human being, so can we. Bhikkhus, when one lives with virtues throughout one's behavior, it becomes very fruitful, for it allows such a person to possess the very condition for right collectedness of mind to take place. When there is right collectedness of mind, meaning samma samadhi, it becomes very fruitful, for it allows a person to settle into the stability of mind. Then, such a person possesses the condition for wisdom, which itself is very fruitful, for it develops into the knowledge and vision, jnana dassana, panya, basically, allowing one to see things as they truly are, yatha bhutang pajanati. And his unliberated heart becomes fully released, where his contaminants, asavas, of sensual lust, re-becoming, and ignorance are ended, and he is finally freed. attaining that which up to that point had not yet been attained, reaching the safe shore of no more suffering. Nibbana. Section 9. Those never to return back again to this world. Afterwards, when the Blessed One had stayed at Kotigama for as long as he pleased, he again addressed the Venerable Ananda and said, "Come, Ananda, let us go to Nadika." "As you wish, Lord." And the Blessed One, along with the Sangha of bhikkhus, went to Nadika and took up residence at the brick house. And this was a very well-known place, and you see the brick house showing up in many, many, many suttas throughout the Nikāyas. By the way, in case you're wondering, Venerable Ananda was a contemporary of Lord Buddha in age. I mean, in fact, some places I read, Venerable Ananda was even a little bit senior to Lord Buddha. So he was also 80 at the very least. So when he's saying, "Okay, Ananda, let's go to this next city," it's not like he's leaning on Ananda, a 16-year-old young kid, novice monk. No, they're both old men, 80 years old. And in those days, 80 really was a significant age, because many, many people were dying at the age of 40 or 50. And they were considered as, wow, somebody who lived a long life. But the human lifespan was nevertheless considered to be about 100. But it was a luxury that many people did not have. So next, the four supermundane states of nobility. What we in Pali also use the term for as Arya Savakas. Then Venerable Ananda approached the Blessed One, and after greeting him respectfully, sat down at one side and said to the Blessed One, "Bhante, here in Nadika, the Bhikkhu Salha has died. Where is he now reborn, Lord? The Bhikkhu Nanda has also died, Bhante. Where is she now reborn? Likewise, the lay male disciple Sudatta and the lay female disciple Sujata of Nadika have also passed away, Lord. Where have they reappeared in their next birth? Likewise, the Upasakas Kukkuta, Kalinga, basically Venerable Ananda went with a list of names saying, could you please give me their new address, in a sense? He's curious. And, we'll see what Lord Buddha will respond like in a minute. Likewise, the Upasakas Kukkuta, Kalinga, Nikata, Katisaha, Tutta, Santutta, Baddha, and Subhadda of Nadika have all died. What is their destination, Lord? What is their future state of rebirth? Ananda, the Bhikkhu Salha, through the destruction of all the mental contaminants in this very lifetime, has finally attained the taintless release of the heart, along with the release through wisdom, having directly known and understood it by himself. Basically, he became an arahant. The Bhikkhuni Nanda, Ananda, through the destruction of the 5 lower fetters that bind beings to the world of the sense pleasures, has reappeared spontaneously among the Suddhavasa Brahma gods. And there she will realize final release in that very place, never again to take rebirth into any lower realm than that pure abode. As for the Upasaka Sudatta, Ananda, having already destroyed the 3 fetters of self-belief, doubt, and faith in the efficacy of pujas and rituals, and through the lessening of lust, hatred, and delusion, he has become a once-returner and is bound to make an end of suffering after having returned only once more to this world. As for the Upasika, Sujata, Ananda, having already destroyed the 3 fetters, she is now completely safe from ever falling into the states of misery, assured and bound for full awakening. So she's a stream winner. Now for the Upasakas, Kukkuta, Kalinga, Nikata, Katisaha, Tutta, Santutta, Baddha, and Subhadda of Nadika, Ananda, through the destruction of the 5 lower fetters that bind beings to the world of the sense pleasures, they have all reappeared spontaneously among the Suddhavasa Brahma gods, where they will realize final release in that very place, never again to take rebirth into any realm other than the pure abodes. There's 5 realms in the Suddhavasa Brahma realms. Those are the realms only for anagamis. And these individuals, and these are lay people. So, further on, more than 50 such lay disciples died in Nadika, having already eradicated the 5 lower fetters, and as a result, they have reappeared spontaneously in the pure abodes, where they too will realize final release, never again to take rebirth into any other realm. Also, Ananda, more than 90 lay disciples who have passed away in Nadika through the destruction of the 3 fetters and the lessening of lust, hatred, and delusion, have become once returners and are bound to make an end of suffering after having returned only once more to this world. Once returners. That is not all, Ananda, because more than 500 lay disciples who died in Nadika, having already eradicated the 3 lower fetters, as a result, have all become stream winners, no longer subject to be reborn into the miserable lower realms, guaranteed to attain full awakening. Oftentimes, at least one place in the suttas that I can recall, having gone over, Lord Buddha is asked as to what does he wish upon his students. He says, at the very least, stream winning. That is my wish. You are all Lord Buddha's students. His wish is to have you attain to, at the very least, stage of stream winning. Can you do that? Can you dedicate your efforts to do that? You know, you have effort to do other things in life, to get up in the morning, to go to work, to go to school, to put your energy to make sure you have enough money to pay for food, rent, mortgage, education for your children, etc., for your next vacation, perhaps. All those things require effort from you, and you are 100% aware and dedicated to that. Can you be dedicated to attaining stream winning? It will not happen by simply smiling, wishing that it was there. One day it will be there. Maybe it will be there. Oh, what a lovely concept for me. No. It requires at the very least the same level of dedication that you have while you go to work, while you eat. It requires at the very least the same level of dedication from each and every one of us. Those individuals, including the lay people who attained stream winning, had exceptional effort placed, especially the arahats. They demonstrated again and again and again that they must have exemplary, exceptional effort being applied all throughout. It will not come without such an exceptional effort, as Webu Sayadaw says. And he himself was an arahant, so he knew what he was talking about. And he's rather contemporary of ours. Some things to consider. Section 10, the mirror of the Dhamma. Truly, Ananda, there is nothing surprising in that human beings should die. But if each time it happens, you were to come to the Tathagata and ask about this or that person who died in this manner, that indeed would be burdensome for me. So he's saying, Ananda, stop coming to me with all these questions. Therefore, Ananda, I will give you the teaching called the mirror of the Dhamma, by possessing which the noble disciple in training, if he so desires, can declare of himself the following: there is no more rebirth for me in the hells, nor as an animal or as a ghost, nor in any of the lower realms. I am a stream winner, safe from ever falling back into those states of misery. Now I stand assured and destined for full awakening. That is basically a sihanada. It's a lion's roar of a noble disciple. And a noble disciple has the qualification, and we get this from the suttas, the approval, the stamp of approval from Lord Buddha himself, where he says a noble disciple who has attained these states could go ahead and declare of himself, to himself, not to the world, by the way, unless they're really cornered and they have to say something. Otherwise, they keep quiet. No noble disciple is going to go around with a loudspeaker saying, I'm a noble disciple. Usually that is an indicator that they are not, by the way. Anyhow, in most cases. And what, Ananda, is the teaching called the mirror of Dhamma, by possessing which the noble disciple in training may go ahead and make such a proclamation? Here, Ananda, the noble disciple in training possesses unshakable faith in the Buddha thus. The Blessed One is an Arhat, perfectly awakened, endowed with sublime knowledge and supremely pure conduct, the well-gone, the knower of worlds, the incomparable tamer of those to be tamed, the teacher of gods and humans, the enlightened, truly the Blessed One. This is the section that we chant in Itipiso Bhagava Arahan Samma Sambuddha, etc. Further, Ananda, the noble disciple in training, possesses unshakable faith in the Dhamma thus. The Dhamma of the Blessed One is well expounded. It is directly visible here and now, immediately effective, inviting one to come and investigate for oneself, ehipassiko, taking one straight forward, undeterred, and to be understood and personally realized by the wise, each for oneself. Svakato Bhagavata Dhammo, etc. Further, Ananda, the noble disciple in training, possesses unshakable faith in the Sangha of noble disciples thus. The disciples of the Blessed One are practicing well the good way, which is the threefold training of Sila, Samadhi, Panya, morality, mental cultivation, and wisdom. The disciples of the Blessed One are practicing the straight path of the threefold training, which is the middle path. The disciples of the Blessed One are practicing wisely to realize Nibbana in a methodical way. The disciples of the Blessed One are practicing the Dhamma in harmony. Such are the 4 pairs of 8 great beings, comprising the 8 noble disciples of the Blessed One, the ones to be honored and respected, deserving of hospitality, worthy of offerings, to be venerated with reverential salutation with one's palms pressed together at the heart, the incomparable field of merit for the world. By the way, the Sangha here that Lord Buddha is referring to whenever we get to this point, Supatipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho, that whole section that I just read through, it is not to be considered only for actual Sangha bhikkhus, members basically, or monastics. No. If you noticed, such are the 4 pairs of 8 great beings. We're talking about the Mahā Sangha. Unfortunately, in the Buddhist world, especially the monastic world, most monastics, when they say Mahā Sangha, they think of the group of the Sangha, monastics gathered there. That I've never come across in the suttas where Lord Buddha is referring to that. Whenever we get to the Mahā, meaning the great Sangha being referred to, Lord Buddha is talking about all 8 categories of noble disciples, which includes lay disciples as well. That is the Mahā Sangha. That is not a mundane level Sangha, meaning ones in robes. That we can call mundane. The Mahā Sangha includes only the Arya Sangha, meaning the noble disciples, meaning they have both path and fruit level disciples, meaning stream winner or stream enter and stream winner could be seen as path and fruit in that designation. Sakadagami, path and fruit, that's 4 already. Anagami, path and fruit, that's 6. And Arahant, path and fruit, that's 8. That completes the Arya Sangha. So whenever we are chanting this, it is acknowledgement for the true Sangha. That's why it's called the Mahā Sangha. So whenever you chant this on your own, or whether at the temple, or just bring to mind, you are acknowledging, you are bowing, you're paying homage to the noble Sangha. Who knows, maybe your neighbor happens to be one of these individuals who are noble. So anyhow, Lord Buddha's listing all these 3, having faith. The noble disciple will immediately have faith in these 3 groups: the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. Let's continue. Further, Ananda, the noble disciple in training, possesses the virtuous behavior that is loved by all the noble ones. For it is complete and perfect, spotless, pure, which is the reason why it is liberating, as it stands unaffected nor influenced by worldly concerns, and thus takes one into the various states of samadhi, the collectedness of the heart. Virtuous behavior is crucial. You must know that. Sometimes life will hit you hard. You will have a really difficult time from, because of your sits perhaps not going so well, and you have low image of yourself perhaps. It's essential for you to also bring your awareness back home, meaning your virtuous behavior. Ask yourself, have I broken any sīla recently? Would I steal? Would I go ahead and have sexual misconduct? Would I lie? Would I kill someone? And if the answer is a categorical no, that is something to celebrate, because even the King of England cannot say that. Cannot say that. No politician, for example, in the world will ever be able to say that. Perhaps most business people or CEOs at one point or another in their daily lives will have to break those. But you, in spite of the fact that you might hold perhaps such a person as a role model, some people do, some listeners might. But these individuals, so-called role models for so many millions of people, cannot hold a candle next to a person who has a virtuous life. So that is a powerful, powerful anchor point to come back to really inculcate, bring up the sense of vidya back. This is what I mean by oftentimes trust in your own inner goodness. Oftentimes we forget to acknowledge that about ourselves. So please, Lord Buddha says, that's the 4th thing for you to bring your awareness to. Ananda, this therefore is the teaching called the mirror of the Dhamma, by possessing which the noble disciple in training, if he so desires, can declare of himself, there is no more rebirth for me in the hells, nor as an animal, or as a ghost, nor in any of the lower realms. I am a stream winner, safe from ever falling back into those states of misery. Now I stand assured and destined for full awakening. And there too, in Nadika, while staying at the brick house, the Blessed One addressed the bhikkhus and taught them the following. Bhikkhus, such is virtue, such is collectedness of mind, and such is wisdom. So he repeats what we went over earlier about sīla, samadhi, panya, and how they are the way to cut the asavas, cut your connection to rebirth. Afterwards, when the Blessed One had stayed at Nadika for as long as he pleased, he again addressed the Venerable Ananda and said, Come, Ananda, let us go to Vaisali. As you wish, Lord. And the Blessed One, along with a large number of bhikkhus, went and took up residence in Vaisali at Ambapali's grove. Ambapali, by the way, was a courtesan. She was very well known in Vaisali and most of India at that time as very pretty, very wealthy because of her lifestyle. She used to charge a lot of money, all these things, and everybody who was powerful wanted to spend time with her. And so she was very well known as Ambapali of Vaisali. Next section is mindfulness and clear comprehension, sati sampajanya. Then, one moment. Then the Blessed One addressed the bhikkhus by saying, bhikkhus, the bhikkhu must always remain mindful, living with full alertness and clearly aware. This is my instruction to you. And how, bhikkhus, must a bhikkhu always remain mindful? Here, bhikkhus, a bhikkhu is fully attentive, carefully staying with the body, mindful of it in all its transitions and states, striving ardently after having overcome longing and sorrow in regard to the world. So Lord Buddha is, by the way, we see this also in the Mahā Parinibbāna Sutta. If some of you recall, when I covered it for a few weeks, these are the same instructions that Lord Buddha is reiterating, is teaching again to the students. Because we don't know, some of them might not have been there present when Lord Buddha was teaching them the Mahā Parinibbāna Sutta. We don't know. But Lord Buddha doesn't want to take any chances. So he is teaching them, even if the students have been there and have been practicing. Remember, the job of the teacher to inspire, encourage, to liven up the zest in them so that they can do that extra sprint to attain the goal of the holy life. So Lord Buddha is saying, whatever the body is doing, you're staying with it. Similarly, he is fully attentive, carefully staying with whatever feeling that is occurring. So that was Kaya Anupassana. This is Vedana Anupassana. Remember, Vedana, your feeling, your awareness is now on the feeling as well. Mindful of it, the feelings in all its transitions, striving ardently after having overcome longing and sorrow in regard to the world. If you just take this one sentence and look at it, you'll see anicca, dukkha, anatta, especially anicca in the beginning part. Do you know of a feeling that you've had that has stayed with you forever? Well, let's say not even forever, for 1 hour. How about 10 minutes? Have you ever had a feeling that has stayed intact, unchanged for 10 minutes? It's impossible. It will always be changing because you are getting input from left and right. Your six sense doors are bringing you different sensations which are causing, instigating, triggering different responses. Perceptions, sannyas are coming in, and suddenly you find yourself swimming in another ocean of feelings that are changing. So they're like the waves in an ocean. But you must have sati to stay with the feeling, to know this is happening. And if you can just use the feeling, you will see anicca. And because there's anicca, there's always dukkha because of anicca. Because you might have been having a wonderful feeling. Oops, the feeling is gone. What is that? That's dukkha. You wanted that pleasurable feeling to stay a little bit longer. What was that? That's dukkha. So it's changing. And you also change. So there is nothing fixed. There is no sense of a being, a sense of self, unchanging, fixed entity. What is that? There's no substantiality. Causes and conditions, that's all there is, Lord Buddha says. That is anatta. There you go. Just from Vedana Anupassana, if you paid enough attention, you would see that taking place in front of your eyes. Similarly, he is fully attentive, carefully staying with whatever state that is occurring in the chitta or heart, mindful of it in all its transitions and states, striving ardently after having overcome longing and sorrow in regard to the world. This is Chittanupassana. So sometimes they're called, some people call it a mind, mental states coming in and out, the state of the mind at that moment. Similarly, he is fully attentive, carefully staying with whatever phenomena along with their relationships. This is Dhammanupassana. Remember, hindrances, the 5 hindrances are a perfect example. That he detects are occurring, mindful of them in all their transitions, including the 5 khandhas. Using the Dhammanupassana is a quick access point, an access way, a method to penetrate into the Pancha Upadana Khandha, the 5 grabbing aggregates, using the Dhammanupassana. Striving ardently after having overcome longing and sorrow in regard to the world. In this manner, he is said to be mindful. Longing and sorrow in regard to the world, that means no matter how difficult life gets around you or how great it is, you are not pulled in either direction. So you have an equanimous mind. Lord Buddha is saying having sati is not enough. You must also have equanimity. That is the last portion of each of these instructions, which oftentimes gets neglected. Having overcome longing and sorrow, sometimes called dejection, in regard to the world. I like it, I don't like it. You're no longer caught in the tug of war. That is a responsible position to be holding. That requires panya, doesn't it? You must have wisdom to not be fooled and see the 5 aggregates as just the 5 aggregates. And how, bhikkhus, does a bhikkhu live with full alertness and is clearly aware? Here, bhikkhus, while going somewhere or returning, the bhikkhu behaves with full alertness and is clearly aware. While looking forward, around him, or in any direction, the bhikkhu behaves with full alertness and is clearly aware. While bending and stretching his body, the bhikkhu behaves with full alertness and is clearly aware. While putting on and wearing his robes, his outer robe, and holding his alms bowl, the bhikkhu behaves with full alertness and is clearly aware. While eating and drinking, chewing and tasting his food, the bhikkhu behaves with full alertness and is clearly aware. While urinating and defecating, the bhikkhu behaves with full alertness and is clearly aware. While walking, standing, sitting, sleeping, waking up, talking, and keeping silent, the bhikkhu behaves with full alertness and is clearly aware. In this manner, he is said to live with full alertness and is clearly aware. You cannot have sampajanya without sati, as you see. Therefore, bhikkhus, this is my instruction that I give to you all. The bhikkhu must always remain mindful, living with full alertness and be clearly aware. Not enough things could be said about that. Meaning mindfulness, having mindfulness with you. One time I was a layman at the time, and I was sitting in a Dhamma hall meditating, and I heard some footsteps, and someone sat and started eating. It was such a loud kind of eating. I didn't need to know who it was or what they were doing. I didn't need to use my eyes, basically. It was so loud, the fact that there was no sati, no sampajanya in the manner of the eating process. It was pure ugliness. What we neglect to consider that is that sati and sampajanya bring with them a certain sense of elegance. Your walk no longer is just a mere walk. Your eating becomes a sight to behold. The way you gaze at something, the way you turn your head to look at something becomes graceful. The way you scratch your head becomes more meaningful. It's very attractive because the world is in a commotion. It's in turmoil. There's no tranquility. And whenever there is a tranquility in this whole noisy chaos that is the world around us, suddenly you become noticed. There's this point of stillness there that you are presenting. You are now a beautiful anomaly. A beautiful anomaly. Thanks to sati and sampajanya. So this is another thing that we can think of to bring that gracefulness into your life. It's not just sati, it's not just Mahasatipatthana that we're going over, or in this case, Mahā Parinibbāna Sutta. Section 11, Ambapali, the courtesan. It was during that time that Ambapali, the famous courtesan, came to know the Blessed One, they say, has already arrived in Vaisali and is now staying at my own mango grove. She was so wealthy that she had a huge mango garden or park or, orchard. And she quickly ordered a large number of magnificent chariots to be made ready, mounted one of them herself, and while being accompanied by the rest, drove out from Vaisali towards her park. This way, she rode her chariot as far as it could go, and then dismounted as she went the rest of the way on foot. That means there was no road, and plus it was considered to be disrespectful to go towards or approach the monastery or the kuti where Lord Buddha was, especially, while going on a chariot. It's almost like showing off. I'm a layperson, I'm wealthy, and you're just a bhikkhu. No, you are showing respect by walking on foot, that portion of the journey. And this was almost like an unspoken rule of that time. Having approached the Blessed One, she respectfully paid homage to him and sat down to one side. Then the Blessed One encouragingly spoke as he inspired, instructed, roused, and gladdened Ambapali, the courtesan's heart, with an enlivening talk on the Dhamma. Afterwards, Ambapali, the courtesan, addressed the Blessed One and said, Bhante, may the Blessed One please accept my dana for tomorrow's meal, accompanied together with the Sangha of Bhikkhus. And the Blessed One consented with his silence. Then, having become certain of the Blessed One's acceptance of the next day's meal, Ambapali, the courtesan, rose from her seat, and after respectfully paying homage to him, and while keeping her right side towards the Blessed One, she left. That means she circumambulated Lord Buddha, usually 3 times, keeping, so they're walking in a clockwise manner. Meanwhile, the Lichavi princes of Vaisali, because you're in Vaisali now, the Lichavi princes are the ones in charge. They didn't have a king, but they were just a conglomerate or principality, many princes working together. The Lichavi princes of Vaisali also heard the news. The Blessed One, they say, has already arrived in Vaisali and is now staying at Ambapali's grove. And they quickly ordered a large number of magnificent chariots to be made ready, where each mounted one, and while being accompanied by the rest, drove out from Vaisali towards the park. Now, among these Lichavi princes, there were some who were dressed in blue, with clothing and ornaments all decked in blue, while others were in yellow, red, and white. So they were all decked. They really loved embellishing themselves and, wearing all these jewelry and things like that, and, outfit. While on their way, it so happened that Ambapali, the courtesan, drove up against the young Lichavis axle to axle. So there was one portion of the road where they both had to take. So now she's returning from Lord Buddha, and she's riding, to go home so that she can start preparing food with her servants. So she's riding her chariot axle to axle. So they're like this way, wheel to wheel and yoke to yoke, the sutta says. Thereupon the Lichavis exclaimed, "Why do you drive up with such gusto against us, rushing so fast, Ambapali?" Now remember, each of these princes knew her, underline, because they were wealthy princes. "My dear princes, and so it is, as I am in a rush, for the Blessed One has been invited by me for tomorrow's dana meal, together with the Sangha of Bhikkhus." And this is a beautiful interaction between them while they're riding the chariots. Ambapali, give up the dana to us. We will give you 100,000 gold coins, because they know how important it is. And they don't know how long Lord Buddha is going to stay in Vaisali. So they want to take that privilege, or, and let's see what she says. My dear princes, even if you were to give me the entirety of Vaisali, together with its tributary lands, I still would not give up to you a dana meal of such great importance. Then the Lichavis snapped their fingers in amusement. See, friends, we've been completely outdone by this woman. We are utterly defeated by this woman. And they continued on their way to Ambapali's grove to go see the Buddha. As the princes approached the park, the Blessed One, in seeing the Lichavis from afar, addressed the bhikkhus and exclaimed, those among you, bhikkhus, who have not yet seen the gods of the 33, meaning those of you who don't have the divine eye, those of you who cannot see the devas of the Davatinsa realm, go ahead and look at them. So Lord Buddha is telling the bhikkhus, look at the Lichavi princes. Gaze upon this assembly of Lichavis bhikkhus, for they surely resemble the gods of the 33 in appearance. So he's saying the gods of the 33 look very similar to these Lichavis, the way they're dressed up. The Lichavi princes rode their chariots as far as they could go and then dismounted. As they went the rest of the way on foot, having approached the Blessed One, they respectfully paid homage to him and sat down to one side. Then the Blessed One encouragingly spoke as he inspired, instructed, roused, and gladdened the Lichavis' hearts with an enlivening talk on the Dhamma. Afterwards, the Lichavi princes addressed the Blessed One and said, Bhante, may the Blessed One please accept our dana for tomorrow's meal, accompanied together with the Sangha of bhikkhus. The Blessed One said, the invitation for tomorrow's dana meal, Lichavis, has been accepted by me from Ambapali, the courtesan. So he says, sorry, that's already taken. Tomorrow's meal is covered by Ambapali. Then the Lichavis again snapped their fingers in amusement and said, see, friends, we've been completely outdone by this woman. We are utterly defeated by this woman. There wasn't an animosity. They were just being, whimsical in a sense, or like, wow. And the Lichavis, while being delighted in hearing the Blessed One's words, rose from their seats, respectfully paid homage to him, and while keeping their right sides towards the Blessed One, they all left. Early the next morning, after the night had passed, Ambapali the courtesan had already prepared a variety of delicious foods in her own home, and she sent word to the Blessed One, announcing, it is time, Bhante. The meal is now ready, O Blessed Lord. Thereupon, in the morning, the Blessed One put on his robes, and by taking his alms bowl and outer robe, along with his Sangha of bhikkhus, he walked to Ambapali's dwelling, and there he took the seat that was prepared for him. And Ambapali herself attended on the Sangha of bhikkhus headed by the Buddha, as she served them with a variety of delicious food. So she she did it by her own hands. Later, when the Blessed One had finished his meal and had removed his hand from his bowl, Ambapali the courtesan took a low seat, and by sitting herself at one side, spoke to the Blessed One thus: Bhante, this grove, O Lord, I offer to the Sangha of bhikkhus headed by the Buddha. And the Blessed One, having accepted the park, went on instructing Ambapali in the Dhamma, and having uplifted, taught, and gladdened her heart, he rose from his seat and departed. So basically, she gave her grove to the Sangha. And usually that is where many times people who make lunch dana offerings to the Sangha, they also sometimes they will make a big offering like that during that time, because it's a very auspicious moment. Yes. And there too in Vaisali, while staying at Ambapali's grove, the Blessed One again addressed the bhikkhus and taught them the following: Bhikkhus, such is virtue, such is collectedness of mind, and such is wisdom. And he went through that whole paragraph, which we've covered I think by now 6 or 7 times. So I don't see a point in doing that now. Okay, section 12. I think this is the last one for today. I think I just want to finish this. We'll start a new section next week. Spending the vassa in velu vagama. Afterwards, when the Blessed One had stayed at Vaisali for as long as he pleased, he again addressed the Venerable Ananda and said, "Come, Ananda, let us go to Veluvagama, as you wish, Lord." And the Blessed One, along with a large number, a sangha of bhikkhus, went and took up residence in Veluvagama. The Blessed One's terminal illness. At that time, the Blessed One spoke to the bhikkhus by saying, "Go now, bhikkhus, and seek shelter anywhere in and around Vaisali where you are welcome, staying with acquaintances and friends, and there spend the vassa, the rains retreat. As for me, I shall spend the vassa here, in this very place, in Veluvagama." "As you wish, Lord," those bhikkhus replied. By the way, tomorrow is the end of the vassa. So this is an auspicious time, I think. It's also, kind of sad when you know in the tone of his voice of he's sending away his bhikkhus to the various parts of Vaisali. So they don't have the means, and you can tell that he doesn't have the energy to instruct them daily, or be attentive to each of their needs. Not long after, however, as the Blessed One entered the vassa period, he became severely ill, experienced sharp and deadly pains, the kind that could make a person wish for death itself. Yet the Blessed One endured all of these mindfully, with full alertness, and while being clearly aware and unperturbed by these painful experiences. Remember, he just gave the bhikkhus the Mahasatipatthana instructions again. While moving, while gesturing, while gazing in a certain direction, while being in the body, where's your sati and sampajanya, especially in those moments when we are at our weakest? And that is the place, that is the time where it really matters the most. We don't practice sati and sampajanya when things are just perfect, happy, dandy thing. No. That's easy. Anyone can do that. But it's those difficult to bear moments when even this body becomes such a heavy burden, where it's a boil, it's a nasty itch. You want to get rid of this body. You want to crawl out of this body. Can you be present, however, when all these states of mind are going in and out of your heart? Then it occurred to the Blessed One, "It would not be fitting if I attain final full release, Parinibbāna, without first addressing my attendants, and without taking leave of the Sangha of Bhikkhus. Therefore, let me suppress this illness by strength of will, and resolve to maintain the life process and live on." Remember, he is not extending his life at this point simply to have more experiences. His primary purpose to exist beyond the point of even his awakening 45 years earlier was simply to teach the Dhamma. That's all. He had completed his task. But as the Buddha, as a Samma Sambuddha at that, he had to teach. And that is, he's trying to eke out every tiny little bit of energy so that he can cause someone's awakening. Maybe there's one student who's just needing to kind of be nudged just in the right way so they can become an Arahant or even a Sotapanna. That's why he is enduring and pushing through the pain. And the Blessed One suppressed the illness by strength. And this is basically a very blatant, sharp criticism of all the Mahayana and Vajrayana ways of, philosophies that say that the Theravada doesn't have the Bodhisattva ideal in it. Well, where did they get the whole idea from? Lord Buddha himself. And what was he? What school is he from, in a sense? What do we represent now? What are we covering? The Pāli Canon. the original teachings of Lord Buddha as best as we can get it, as close to the source as we can get it. And here we see the compassion, the Mahā Karuna of Lord Buddha himself. So to have the audacity centuries later to say that the Savakas didn't have any of that. We, the Mahayana, has Lord Vajrayana. These are foolish misrepresentations of what Lord Buddha has been trying to do for 45 years, because those individuals and their erroneous ways of thinking are nullifying this beautiful, beautiful effort being put day in, day out by Lord Buddha, personifying what a bodhisattva is. And you see the same thing in so many bhikkhus' lives. Venerable Punna, Venerable Sariputta. I mean, anyhow, wrong view, right? Miccāditi. And the Blessed One suppressed the illness by strength of his will. And as he resolved to maintain the life process and lived on, and the Blessed One's pains disappeared. Soon, having recovered from his sickness, the Blessed One came out of his dwelling place and sat down in the shade within the courtyard of the monastery on a seat prepared for him. Then the Venerable Ananda approached the Blessed One, and after paying homage to and greeting him, he sat down at one side and spoke to the Blessed One by saying, Bhante, it is so wonderful to see the Blessed One at ease again, which tells us that he was already in pain when he sent the bhikkhus to Vaisali to do the vassa, because Venerable Ananda had seen him last at that time. So Lord Buddha, then we can also see that he had not been going out for Pindapada because he was so ill. So most probably the food was being brought to him. So fortunate it is for me, O Lord, to see the Blessed One recovered. For truly, Lord, when I saw the Blessed One's sickness, it was as though my own body became weak as a creeper. Everything around became dim to me, and my senses failed me. Yet, Lord, I kept consoling myself with the encouraging thought that the Blessed One would not come to his final full release until he first gave some last instructions to the Sangha of bhikkhus. We see the same type of a level of attachment, shall we say, in Venerable Ananda, when we see at the time when Venerable Sariputta died. So he was very much attached. He has such a human, you want to call it, that kind of like homey feeling of almost like a child. He had that purity of heart, Venerable Ananda, and he was very outspoken with that. So he was very expressive, which brings life also to, you know, these suttas that come to us from 2,600 almost years ago. After the Venerable Ananda spoke these words, the Blessed One addressed him by saying, "But Ananda, what more does the Sangha of bhikkhus expect from me?" Interesting. I have set forth the Dhamma without making any distinctions whatsoever of esoteric and exoteric teachings, secret and open type of, you know, you have in different schools of Buddhism that came crawling out of the centuries, out of, you know, different influences that were taking shape in Central Asia and Northern India, etc. at that time, that taught different levels of Buddhism, said, you know, well, they even had the different kayas. They even had formulated to justify their erroneous views. They came out with Nirmanakaya, Sambhogakaya, and Dhammakaya versions of the Buddha's own body. So meaning Lord Buddha taught the mundane teaching, meaning this Dhamma, they call it mundane, to the Savakas, to just the listeners, people with low capacity to understand. And then he taught the Mahayana Suttas with the Sambhogakaya body, which is, you know, Bodhisattva, all these vows, things like that, suttas that never were taught by Lord Buddha. And then you have the Vajrayana later on came, who said Dhammakaya body was what Lord Buddha uses to give the secret teachings. None of it exists. You don't see it anywhere. And Lord Buddha blatantly calls this out because he knew this. Other places you see, Lord Buddha says, I never, even here, I did not teach you with one hand behind my back or with closed fist. You don't have to go through secret initiations, empowerments to be given the Dhamma. You have that abundantly in the Vajrayana sects. Well, that goes contrary to what Lord Buddha taught. How can I call that Dhamma? But in this world of integrate, accept everyone, let's be at peace and harmony, let's not ruffle the boat, let's push this under the carpet. Well, as we've been doing that for centuries. We've been axing away at this beautiful tree called the Dhamma, the teachings of Lord Buddha. And we alone are responsible for that, not Lord Buddha. He gave us the Dhamma for 45 years, and all the wonderful arahants and other bhikkhus and the tradition that brought us the suttas to this point, we are really causing it such a nasty harm. Because now we are in a very critical position to keep or destroy the teachings of Lord Buddha. We have to say it like it is, basically, and not be afraid. For the sake of preservation of the Dhamma, we have to call it like it is, whether something is Dhamma, whether it's not. Not be afraid. That is taking refuge, truly, not some concoction that has no bearings, that has no foundation in the teachings of Lord Buddha whatsoever. So Lord Buddha is saying, I did not teach, I did not make a distinction between esoteric and exoteric teachings. There has never been a time, Ananda, where the Tathagata somehow held a closed fist as a teacher to somehow keep some things back or secret from you all. So he's saying this because of what Ananda said. Oh, I was hoping that Lord Buddha would come back and give us, other, like he's saying, haven't I given you the teachings? Like, what are you expecting now? Whoever may think that he should now lead the Sangha of bhikkhus instead, or that the Sangha depends on him, then let him believe in such futile things. Because there were bhikkhus also. Remember, Devadatta was not the only one with lofty ideas, of conceited ideas that, oh, well, I guess who's going to be the, next leader of the Sangha? This is a very backwards way of thinking, which again, we have seen not in the other traditions only, but including in the Theravada sects, traditions. We have that. Unfortunately, we have in Thailand, let's say Sangharaja, or even in Sri Lanka, you have different heads of the Sangha in Thai forest traditions, plural. And everybody looks at that person as the head. Well, Lord Buddha made it very clear. It's the Dhamma. Lord Buddha dies, the Dhamma is the proxy, if you will, is the next. Actually, Lord Buddha was the Dhamma. We don't have that. We have these sneaky ways to bring in that corrupt way of thinking of having a next in line. Today we have that. This so-called Ajahn or Luangpo, this chief, this head, this holy, His Holiness, this and that. What is that? It's just a bhikkhu. It's supposed to be a bhikkhu. That's it. It's the Dhamma that has to be maintained at the highest point in one's own lifestyle. That's what makes us not so very popular, by the way. But who cares? Whoever may think that he should now, so basically Lord Buddha is saying, those bhikkhus who are having those thoughts, that's their own problem as to who's going to be next. For it would be such a person who would worry about giving last instructions to the Sangha of bhikkhus, somebody who's caught in the personality view of I am supposed to be the next in line, oh, this and that. But Lord Buddha is saying, I don't even have that. I don't have that attachment to the Sangha even. That's what he's saying. I'm not even attached to that. However, Ananda, the Tathagata has no such concerns as to who should lead the Sangha of bhikkhus, or that the Sangha depends on him. So why should the Tathagata be concerned about giving instructions to the Sangha of bhikkhus? So he's basically admonishing, criticizing Ananda, trying to teach him something. Ananda, I am now old, frail, aged, far gone in years. This is my 80th year, and my life is spent. Even as an old and broken down cart is held together with much difficulty, Ananda, so is this body of the Tathagata, kept going only with much support. So he's leaning against things, all these things that are happening. We have one place in the suttas where Venerable Sariputta comes, and he's also old. I think he was also older than Lord Buddha by a few months. He comes and he says, Bhante, everything is leaking. Everything is leaking. So going to the bathroom, coming out, things don't stop. And you're wearing robes, so it can be embarrassing. But if you're an arahant of that caliber and, you don't care, but the fact is the body is breaking down. So you're seeing it in front of your eyes all the time. And that's another thing that Lord Buddha is experiencing probably. Ananda, it is only when the Tathagata, by ignoring all external objects with the cessation of certain feelings, enters into and stays in the single, signless collectedness of mind, that the Tathagata's body experiences comfort. Signless collectedness of mind is animitta ceto vimutti, which is one of the directions, shall we say, or trajectories that the mind looks at whenever, in this case, the arahant comes out of the cessation of perception and feeling. Okay? Sanya Vedayita Nirodha Samapatti. When the person is in that state, the body, pain, or any sensations just vanish. There's no perception, there's no feeling. We've covered this in the Chula Vedalla Sutta and also the Mahā Vedalla Sutta in the past. Therefore, Ananda, you must become islands unto yourselves. Become your own refuge, seeking no external refuge whatsoever. Make the Dhamma your island. Let the Dhamma be your only refuge, no longer seeking any other refuge. He is preparing Ananda, because he knows how Ananda was so attached to Lord Buddha. He also knew how Ananda was also attached to Venerable Sariputta. And how Ananda does a bhikkhu become an island unto himself, becoming one's own refuge, seeking no external refuge whatsoever, making the Dhamma his island and only refuge, no longer seeking any other refuge. When a bhikkhu is fully attentive, carefully staying with the body, mindful of it in all its transitions and states, striving ardently after having overcome longing and sorrow in regard to the world. So he's now repeating what we went over earlier with Sati and Sampajanya and from the Mahasatipatthana. I don't want to repeat that section again. So basically he's going to talk, he's mentioning the Kayanupassana, he's mentioning Vedananupassana next, and then Chittanupassana, and then finally Dhammanupassana. Whether now or long after I am gone, Ananda, all those bhikkhus of mine who truly become islands unto themselves, becoming one's own refuge, seeking no external refuge whatsoever, making the Dhamma their island and only refuge, no longer seeking any other. There's a repeat here, I think. I'm sorry for that. It is those bhikkhus who will go to the very summit, who are desirous of the training. Meaning, these are the highest. These are the highest of the students of Lord Buddha's. He blatantly calls that out. He says that. It's those people who willingly don't stop halfway. They're willing to go all the way. That's one of the reasons why we cannot look at the Dhamma as a sometimes affair. you looking at your sati practice as a sometimes affair. I'll do sampajanya when I have time. I understand not having enough time every day to meditate. That's okay. Especially if you're living a busy life as a layman. But that does not nullify your responsibility to maintain sati. That's different than doing the official sitting practice. That's what's important. And that is how we're going to taste the highest. Otherwise, that's never going to happen. So I will stop here because I barely have a little bit of voice left to address any questions. So for today's section, we'll continue from the next section next week. Are there any questions and thoughts and comments about today's sutta or the practice? If there are hands, please raise them. And let me see if I can scroll through. Yes, Greg.
Bhante, thank you for your talk. Just a quick question. You mentioned then about a repeat in your text there that you were sorry for, and it drew my attention to the fact that I don't have a PDF copy of this talk yet, and there was a mention earlier that it was going to take you some time to do it. I'm wondering if you've done that yet, or did I just get the email?
Oh, yes, I posted it today. I don't know when you checked it online.
Oh, the PDF?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Let me...
This afternoon.
Where did you post it?
Oh, it's on the website, the same place I post the mindrelease.com. Whenever I
normally sends them to us.
I asked her not to do with these sutta because I'm posting them. It's becoming so redundant and a lot of work for her. I don't want to overburden her with more work than she has to. So what I do is whenever I'm able to finish the section, in this case, section of this vast sutta, I'm immediately, even a few hours short of the retreat itself or the sitting, I post it on the website, which is mindrelease.com in the Pāli Sutta section, and the PDF is there. So far from this sutta, you have two. The first installment, which is A, and then B, which is the one that I posted today, which is what I covered. Yes, I hope that answers.
I've been lazy and been relying on Dharmadina. I'll go and have a look at the website now.
Okay, good. It's mindrelease.com. So it's this, in the Pāli Suttas, that's one of the menu items. Click on, you have all of the suttas, including the ones that I didn't cover here in our weekly sits, but I covered when I was in Malaysia. So you have a huge slew of suttas there that Dhammadina hadn't sent. So it's like a reservoir for suttas.
A gold mine. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm glad it's being of use, and of course, any mistakes you see there, they're all mine. So apologies for that. Any other thoughts, comments? Everybody's quiet. Well, sometimes I think you're also very compassionate because you're compassionate towards Bhante. Is like, oh, let me save his voice or something, or I don't know. If that's the case, that's okay. If it's a question that needs to be asked and you feel like it's important for your own practice, please don't hesitate. I'll do my best. Or even you can send it to me. Don't feel in private. You can send it to me and I will do my best to answer it.
Bhante?
Yes, Joe. I
have a question. A quick one, but I'm not sure if the answer will be quick as well. But here it goes. What are your thoughts on white lies? Yeah. So I don't know whether that's a big deal. Like maybe, for example, if you're having a bad day, but someone comes and asks you, how are you? And you don't feel like you want to tell this person how you feel. Like you don't want to unburden yourself to every person who comes along and say, how's your day? So you just say, oh yeah, I'm okay. So, I suppose the reason why I'm asking this question is how do we not fall into the two extremes of following sīla? On the one hand, you want to be too obsessed, and on the other hand, you don't want to go down that slippery slope, like, oh, it's okay, it's just a white lie, So.
Mm-hmm. Well, I will try to answer it in not the way that you might want me to. What I mean by that is using that as that moment when someone comes to ask you, hey, how are you doing, Joe? Using that moment as a moment of sati. Meaning, well, what's wrong with me telling this person that, I'm not doing so well? It requires some compassion, some honesty, because we're living in an era of conformity, of even the pitch sometimes. Like in the US, say in California or Los Angeles, is like, I noticed this for years, people would say, hey, how are you? And so the pitch goes up a little bit, and the person responds, I'm okay, how are you? So it's like almost like this, and then if you're wise enough, you will kick yourself later on after you're walking away. It's like, why did I even speak like that and say those words? I'm not feeling well. So who did you really lie to? Well, first yourself. Also, there was no sati. So can I use that as a moment of sati by me dropping in to myself and checking in? Forget about the other person. Why do you even have to say anything? You can smile. You can be courteous and say, actually, I don't know how to respond to that. What's wrong with that kind of a reply? That's an honest response, isn't it? But I encourage you, I urge you to always be truthful to yourself first. This is what many people don't understand. This is when you become an idol worshiper or idolater, something like that. When you are holding on to the rule for the sake of the rule and sacrificing yourself for the sake of the rule. Well, that is not Dhamma, okay? So I had one teacher once in regards to musavada, which is related to speech from the Panchasila, the fourth. He said, well, why do you always have to tell the truth? Who said you have to tell the truth? And that raised an eyebrow, as you can imagine. And this was a monk telling me this. And then he clarified his position and he said, imagine you're speaking to a group of friends and one of your friends happens to have a mother who happens to be a prostitute. Now, do you go, and you know that, let's say the other group of friends don't know. Now, technically, if you go ahead and say, hey, how is your mother who happens to be a courtesan, or even, you have worse terms, right? My friend happens to be the son of a whatever. You would still be saying the truth, right? But that would still not be Dhamma. In fact, that is adhamma because you just committed akusala. On the surface, it might look like you actually practiced the fourth precept, but you didn't. This we know from Lord Buddha himself. Look at this. We just covered the section where Lord Buddha is sitting, encouraging, inspiring, and instructing a courtesan who makes a living off of sex. Now, I don't know if at that time she was, because there were several courtesans during the course of their lives who, once they came to Lord Buddha, they actually relinquished that lifestyle. And even some of them attained noble status, Sotapatti, Sakadagami, etc. And they stopped living that lifestyle. Ambapali, I think, also lived like that. But anyhow, Lord Buddha did not have that critical position towards her. So compassion has to be present, which oftentimes gets to be thrown out with the, bathwater for the sake of, oh, it's like the, being self-righteous type of a thing. Oh, I practice my sīla. Well, where is your humanity? Last week I was talking, I think it was last week, about decency. Decency can never be replaced by so-called sīla. Your decency has to be there with your pancha sīla. Your humanity has to be present there. Your kindness, your compassion has to be there. We must use Lord Buddha as our primary example for this. So a human being should never be sacrificed for the so-called law or rule. The rules are made to ease the suffering of beings, not to add. So if I went ahead and told that friend of mine, let's say, hey, your mother happens to be a prostitute, did I practice Dhamma? Where's compassion? Where's kindness? Where's my humanity? It's all gone out the window. So using that, all of this could be a wonderful arena for practicing sati, because it never is about the other person. The words that you're about to speak when someone comes asking you a question, like, how you doing, Joe? It's actually, think of it as, hey, Joe, are you mindful? You can hear those words instead of him asking you, hey, how are you doing, Joe? So this is a play on words in your head, because everything has to be about you coming closer and closer to having sati and sampajanya. It's not about just sīla. Remember, there's a purpose for practicing sīla, to ease suffering and to get you closer to nibbana. How is this so far? Is this helping you?
Yes, Bhante.
Not the kind of answer you expected, huh?
No, not at all.
But I hope it's useful. So applying it is key, but don't be so attached to rites, because that can also be rites and rituals, remember?
Yeah.
And there's a term for what I'm describing. It's called adi sīla, where you're carrying sīla in your heart. It becomes part of your personality. You might not even take the 5 precepts every day, but you are so, it's infused into your DNA strand. Everywhere you go, you're living according to sīla. And that's what Lord Buddha called adi, higher sīla, higher virtue. And that is what a noble disciple has. So, good questions. Any other thoughts, comments? I know we went a little bit over, but this is good. All right, let us transfer some merits. May suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear-struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief, and may all beings find health relief. May all beings share in these merits that we have thus acquired for the acquisition of all kinds of wholesome happiness. May beings inhabiting space and earth, devas and nagas of mighty power, share in these merits of ours. May they long protect the Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Until next time, stay well, be well. Keep the mind empty of redundant, repeated thoughts. And don't be afraid to walk away. Don't be afraid to relinquish the things that incessantly keep us in the cycle of suffering. And they are in our everyday experiences. Suffering is not outside. Suffering is not in some sutta. Suffering is in your life, plain and simple. Pacchatang veditabbo vinyuhi. It is to be realized by the wise for themselves through your own effort. But we need to have the eyes to see So use sati to identify whenever you're experiencing suffering and ask. Don't be afraid to ask. Apply the formula of the Four Noble Truths anytime. It is there for you to use. Is there suffering? Is there dukkha? Okay. Am I holding on to anything? Yes, that's why there's dukkha. Okay, the moment you realize these two already, there's a drop, a relief. And then how come I can't stay in that? Let's stay in that. That's the Eightfold Path. So without turning this into an extra Dhamma talk, see you next week. Be well. Keep smiling. Sukhya Hotu.